The soft sound of fabric rustling filled the quiet room as Deborah Marshall meticulously folded the last of her son, Chris's uniforms. Each crease held memories of pride and moments shared. A mother's heart both swelled and shattered with every touch of the material. Chris had always been the kind of son who wore his dreams on his sleeve, a resolute young man who found purpose in serving his country with unwavering dedication. As she placed the crisp uniforms into the box, a wave of nostalgia washed over her, bringing a bittersweet smile to her lips. She could almost hear his laughter echoing through the house, a sound that felt like a warm embrace, yet now served as a haunting reminder of the void he left behind. Deborah had always been resilient, the kind of woman who faced adversity with a fiery spirit. She had raised Chris on her own after his father left when Chris was just a toddler. In those early years, she had instilled in him a sense of honor, hard work, and the importance of standing up for what was right. Those values had shaped him into the man he became, a Marine captain who believed in duty and sacrifice. But now, as she prepared for his funeral, that same spirit felt heavy with the knowledge that her son's final honors would be stripped away, lost to the relentless budget cuts that plagued the military. The news had hit her like a thunderclap, shattering her already fragile heart. How could it be that her son, a hero who had fought bravely for his country, would be denied the military honors he rightfully deserved? The thought of a simple graveside service without the ceremonial salute, the flag-draped coffin, or the presence of his brothers-in-arms felt like a betrayal. As she sat on the edge of his neatly made bed, the weight of grief settled in her chest, choking back the tears that threatened to spill. She had to do something, anything, to ensure that Chris received the farewell he had earned. Determined to honor his sacrifice, Deborah began to plan a small vigil, a tribute that would gather their family and a few close friends. It wasn't much, but it was a start. She envisioned candles flickering in the twilight, each flame representing a memory, a story, a piece of Chris that would forever linger in their hearts. As she reached out to family members, sharing her plans, a sense of purpose ignited within her. She found solace in the idea that she could create a moment where love and remembrance would triumph over the cold indifference of bureaucracy. Days passed as Deborah poured her energy into organizing the vigil, her heart heavy with sorrow, yet lit with an unwavering flame of love for her son. She spent hours crafting a simple pamphlet, detailing Chris's journey from a bright-eyed boy with dreams of adventure to a steadfast Marine who answered the call of duty. Each word was a tribute, a testament to a life lived with honor. She longed for others to understand the depth of his sacrifice, to recognize the man behind the uniform. On the morning of the vigil, the sun broke through the clouds, casting a golden hue across the town. Deborah stood at the park where they would gather, her heart racing as she set up a table adorned with photographs of Chris. She smiled through her tears as she placed a framed picture of him in his dress blues at the center. It was a moment that seemed both surreal and profoundly real, a moment where love and loss intertwined, creating a tapestry of bittersweet memories. As the first few attendees arrived, she felt a warmth envelop her, the shared grief bringing them together in a way she hadn't expected. Friends and family embraced her, offering condolences and sharing their own stories of Chris. Laughter mixed with tears as they reminisced about his antics, his kindness, and the way he always seemed to light up a room. With every story shared, Deborah felt a piece of her heart heal, the love surrounding her creating a shield against the pain. But as the evening wore on, a shadow flickered across her heart. This vigil, however heartfelt, would never replace the honor of a military farewell. As the candles were lit, illuminating the faces of those gathered, Deborah's resolve strengthened. She would not let Chris fade into the background. He deserved to be celebrated as the hero he was. Just as she was about to speak, a figure appeared at the edge of the gathering, a silhouette against the twilight. Deborah's gaze shifted, and her heart skipped a beat as she recognized the man approaching. It was Major Jackson, a retired officer she had spoken to months earlier when Chris had deployed. They had shared a brief conversation about what it meant to serve, and now, seeing him here filled her with a flicker of hope. Major Jackson had a reputation for being a man of action, someone who fought for his comrades long after their active duty ended. As he drew closer, Deborah could see the determination etched on his face, a shared understanding that transcended words. He stepped forward, and as he did, a hush fell over the group, all eyes on him. "Deborah," he began, his voice steady but laced with emotion. "I heard about what's been happening, and I couldn't sit idly by knowing Chris deserved so much more." His words sent a ripple of hope through her. She felt the weight of her heart lift, as if a door had opened, allowing light to flood in. Major Jackson continued, sharing stories of camaraderie and the importance of honoring those who had served. It was a call to action, a plea for unity in the face of injustice. As he spoke, Deborah felt a fire igniting within her, a shared mission to ensure that Chris's sacrifice would not be forgotten. With each passing moment, the air thickened with anticipation. The energy of the gathering shifted, as if they were all being drawn into a singular purpose. Major Jackson's voice resonated, reminding them that heroes do not simply disappear. Their legacies endure through the actions of those who remain. It was a powerful reminder that they were not alone in this fight, that together, they could make a difference. In that moment, Deborah's heart swelled with gratitude. She realized that this vigil was no longer just about honoring Chris. It was about igniting a movement, a call for justice and recognition that would echo far beyond the confines of their small gathering. With renewed determination, she looked around at the faces illuminated by candlelight, the weight of sorrow intertwining with a burgeoning hope. It was time to fight for what was right, to ensure that every fallen soldier received the honors they were due. As the candlelight danced in the evening breeze, illuminating the faces of those gathered, Deborah felt a shift in the atmosphere. The air was thick with emotion, an unspoken bond forming among the attendees as they collectively embraced the mission that had ignited in their hearts. Major Jackson's words resonated, igniting a relentless fire within them. It was clear that the vigil had transformed into something much larger than she had anticipated, the birth of a movement born out of love, grief, and a fierce desire for justice. "Tonight, we honor Chris," she began, her voice steady despite the tumult of emotions roiling within her. "We honor his service and the sacrifices he made for all of us. But we must also remember that he is not alone. Too many brave souls have given everything, and they deserve to be recognized, to be celebrated." The crowd murmured in agreement, the flickering flames casting shadows of solidarity against the backdrop of the gathering dusk. Deborah felt a surge of adrenaline as she continued, her heart pounding with the weight of her purpose. This isn't just about one man. It's about every soldier, every family who has felt the sting of loss and the injustice of being denied the honors they deserve. We must raise our voices. As Deborah spoke, she noticed several faces in the crowd nodding vigorously, their expressions set with determination. Among them were veterans who had served alongside Chris, their eyes glistening with unshed tears. They understood the weight of her words, the depth of her grief, and the urgency of the cause. The moment felt electric, a convergence of hearts and minds united in a singular purpose. Let's not let our loved ones fade into obscurity. Let's make sure their sacrifices are acknowledged and honored, not just in our hearts, but by the systems that govern us. Together, we can compel those in power to recognize the value of every service member, to ensure that no family is left in the cold. A loud cheer erupted from the crowd, echoing through the park like a rallying cry. Deborah felt a rush of energy coursing through her veins. Hope surged within her, propelling her forward. This was just the beginning, she realized. The gathering was more than a vigil. It was the first step in a larger campaign to demand justice for fallen heroes. As she concluded her speech, Major Jackson stepped forward once more, his presence commanding yet comforting. "We need to take this momentum and channel it into action. Deborah, you've sparked something incredible tonight. We can't let it die here. Let's plan. Let's organize. Let's reach out to others and make our voices heard, loud and clear." Deborah felt the weight of his words land heavily on her shoulders, but instead of fear, she felt exhilaration. This was her chance to make a difference, to ensure that Chris's legacy lived on in a way that would honor not just him, but all those who had served. "I'm in," she affirmed, her voice ringing with newfound confidence. "Let's do this." With the flickering candles as their witnesses, those gathered began to share ideas, thoughts, and strategies. They formed small groups, exchanging contact information, brainstorming ways to raise awareness, and discussing how to leverage social media to amplify their message. Deborah moved from group to group, her heart swelling with gratitude as she saw the resolve in their eyes. As the night deepened, the vigil transformed into a planning session, a collective brainstorming effort fueled by shared grief and an urgent desire for change. People exchanged stories of their loved ones, each tale a testament to the sacrifices made, echoing the sentiment that no one should be forgotten. The air crackled with determination, and Deborah felt a palpable shift in the atmosphere, a sense of empowerment that was contagious. While the conversations flowed, Deborah's mind raced with possibilities. She envisioned a petition demanding military honors for all fallen soldiers, a campaign that could garner support from families, veterans, and citizens alike. They could organize rallies, reach out to local media, and perhaps even lobby their representatives. The thought of mobilizing so many people stirred something deep within her, a sense of purpose that transcended her personal grief. As the evening wore on, the candles flickered like stars against the darkening sky, a symbol of the hope that had ignited in their hearts. Deborah paused, taking a moment to absorb the scene before her. Friends and family, veterans and strangers, all united in a common cause, their faces illuminated by the soft light of the candles. It was a beautiful sight, but it was also a reminder of the pain that had brought them together. "Let's meet again soon," she suggested, her voice rising above the chatter. "We don't have time to waste. Chris deserves this, and so do all the others." The crowd erupted into agreement, and plans were set in motion to reconvene in a week's time. They would gather at the community center, a space large enough to accommodate everyone who wished to join the cause. Deborah felt a wave of relief wash over her. This was not just her fight anymore. It was a collective effort, a movement that pulsed with the heartbeat of shared loss and hope. As the vigil began to wind down and the candles flickered ominously low, a sense of camaraderie filled the air. Deborah walked around, embracing those who had come to support her, thanking them for their presence and their commitment. Each hug, each word of encouragement, fortified her resolve. She could already feel the foundation of something significant taking shape, a grassroots campaign that promised to honor Chris and countless others. As the last of the candles were extinguished and the group began to disperse, Deborah lingered for a moment longer, looking at the park that had held their vigil. The shadows of the trees stretched long and deep, but she felt a lightness in her heart, a newfound sense of purpose that replaced the weight of despair. Chris's memory would not be lost, nor would it be diminished by bureaucratic indifference. She would ensure that his sacrifice resonated far beyond the confines of their town. In the days that followed, Deborah poured herself into the work that lay ahead. With the help of Major Jackson and the others, she established a social media presence, using platforms to spread the word about their cause. They created a hashtag #HonorEveryHero, and began sharing stories, images, and updates about their plans. The response was overwhelming. Families across the nation began to share their own stories of loss, of heroes who had been overlooked, their voices adding to the growing chorus demanding change. Deborah was amazed at how quickly their movement gained traction. News outlets began picking up the story, highlighting the plight of families like hers who felt abandoned by the very system meant to honor their loved ones. She found herself participating in interviews, sharing Chris's story, the struggle, and the determination to make a difference. Each time she spoke, she felt Chris's spirit beside her, urging her on. With each passing day, Deborah felt the weight of her grief transforming into something powerful. It was no longer just sadness. It was resolve, a fierce determination to advocate for those who had given everything. She reached out to local veterans organizations, seeking their support and guidance. Together, they organized meetings with community leaders and began drafting a petition to present to Congress. one that would call for policy changes ensuring that all fallen soldiers receive the honors they deserved, regardless of budget constraints. As the movement gathered momentum, Deborah found herself surrounded by a tapestry of stories and shared experiences. Families rallied together, each person carrying their own burden of loss, yet finding strength in unity. They shared ideas, strategized on how to reach lawmakers, and organized community events to raise awareness. Deborah felt a sense of belonging that had eluded her since Chris's death. She was part of something larger than herself, a collective that honored the sacrifices made by so many. In the midst of this whirlwind of activity, there were still moments of quiet reflection. Late at night, when the world outside was still, Deborah would sit in Chris's room, surrounded by memories. The uniforms, the photographs, his trophies from childhood. She would close her eyes and remember his laughter, the way he would light up when sharing stories of his adventures. It was in these moments that she felt closest to him, drawing strength from their bond as she prepared for the challenges ahead. As the petition began to take shape, Deborah and her team mapped out their next steps. They reached out to influential figures, politicians, veterans, and activists, hoping to gain their support. Each email sent, each phone call made, was a step closer to achieving their goal. She knew that the path would not be easy, but the tenacity she had witnessed in others fueled her own resolve. Then came the day they had all been waiting for, the launch of their petition. With a sense of excitement mixed with trepidation, Deborah stood before a gathering of supporters, ready to unveil their grassroots campaign. The atmosphere buzzed with anticipation as she took the stage, flanked by Major Jackson and several veterans who had joined the cause. Today, we stand together not just as families mourning our losses, but as advocates for change, she began, her voice steady and resolute. We are here to ensure that no soldier is forgotten, that every sacrifice is honored. Our heroes deserve recognition, and we will not rest until we achieve that. The crowd erupted in applause, a show of solidarity that reverberated through the air. Deborah felt a rush of adrenaline, the energy of the moment propelling her forward. As she shared the details of their petition and the steps they would take to gather signatures, she could see the determination mirrored in the faces of those present. This was just the beginning. With each passing week, the movement gained momentum. They secured meetings with local lawmakers, sharing their stories and advocating for the change they sought. Deborah learned the intricacies of advocacy, navigating the complex landscape of policymaking. She began to understand the nuances of legislation, the importance of building coalitions, and the need for a strategic approach to garner support. The more she immersed herself in the process, the more empowered she felt. Each meeting, each conversation, was another brick laid in the foundation of a campaign that would honor Chris and all fallen service members. The weeks turned into months, and their petition began to take shape, bolstered by thousands of signatures from families, veterans, and citizens across the country. Deborah watched as the movement gained traction, her heart swelling with pride at the collective effort. Each signature represented a story, a life touched by loss, and a commitment to change. It was a testament to the power of community and the unyielding spirit of those who refused to be silenced. As the campaign progressed, Deborah and her team organized a series of fundraising events, aiming to raise awareness and gather resources for their cause. They held bake sales, charity runs, and community barbecues, each event infused with laughter and camaraderie. The atmosphere was electric, filled with the warmth of shared purpose. Deborah felt a sense of kinship with those around her, a realization that they were all bound together by the same thread of grief and hope. During one particularly successful event, a local news station covered their efforts. Deborah found herself standing in front of a camera, sharing her story and the stories of others, her voice unwavering as she spoke about the importance of honoring every hero. The reporter listened intently, nodding in understanding, and soon the segment was broadcast, capturing the hearts of viewers across the nation. Deborah's phone buzzed incessantly with messages of support, each one a reminder that they were not alone in their fight. In the wake of the media attention, more veterans began to join their cause, sharing their own experiences of loss and the longing for recognition. Deborah was moved by their stories, each one a powerful reminder of the sacrifices made and the importance of honoring those who served. She listened intently, absorbing their insights as they strategized together on how to amplify their message. With each new voice added to their chorus, the momentum of the movement grew stronger, echoing the urgency of their mission. But amid the excitement and progress, Deborah also faced challenges. There were moments of doubt, times when she questioned whether they could truly effect change in a system that seemed so entrenched in bureaucracy. She encountered resistance from some officials who were dismissive of their cause, citing budget constraints and red tape as insurmountable barriers. In those moments, the weight of her grief would threaten to pull her under. Yet she found strength in the support of her community, her family, and the veterans who rallied around her. They reminded one another of the purpose that had brought them together and the lives they sought to honor. One evening, after a particularly challenging meeting with a local representative, Deborah stood on her porch, staring out into the distance as the sun dipped below the horizon. She felt the familiar ache of loss, the emptiness that had become a part of her life since Chris's passing. The thought of him not receiving the honors he deserved weighed heavily on her heart. As tears slipped down her cheeks, she whispered a silent prayer, seeking guidance and strength to continue the fight. It was in that moment of vulnerability that she felt a surge of warmth, as if Chris were standing beside her, reassuring her that she was on the right path. She took a deep breath, allowing the love she had for her son to fuel her determination. She would not back down. She would honor his legacy by ensuring that no other family had to endure the same pain. As the petition gained momentum, Deborah and her team arranged a meeting with a prominent senator who had expressed interest in their cause. It was a pivotal moment, and Deborah felt a mix of excitement and anxiety as they prepared to present their case. They crafted a compelling narrative, weaving together the stories of countless fallen heroes and their families, underscoring the need for policy changes that would guarantee military honors for all service members. On the day of the meeting, Deborah arrived at the senator's office, her heart racing with anticipation. The walls were adorned with photographs of military personnel, a testament to the sacrifices made for their country. She took a moment to collect herself, reminding herself of the importance of their mission. As they entered the conference room, she felt the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders. This was not just about Chris. It was about every soldier who had fought valiantly for their nation. The senator greeted them warmly, and as they began to present their case, Deborah felt a sense of clarity wash over her. She spoke passionately, sharing Chris's story and the collective stories of those who had come together to demand justice. Her voice rose and fell with emotion, each word carrying the weight of the lives they were fighting for. The senator listened intently, nodding as she spoke, and Deborah could see the wheels turning in his mind. When the presentation concluded, there was a moment of silence, a moment where hope and uncertainty danced together in the air. The senator leaned back in his chair, contemplating the information presented before him. Finally, he spoke, his voice steady and resolute. "This is a powerful movement, and I commend you all for your courage and determination. We cannot allow our fallen heroes to be forgotten, and I will do everything in my power to support your cause." The room erupted in cheers, a wave of relief and gratitude washing over them. Deborah felt tears prick at her eyes as joy and hope flooded her heart. They had taken a significant step forward, and it felt as if a weight had been lifted from her shoulders. Together, they had ignited a fire that would not be extinguished. With the senator's support, Deborah and her team began to strategize the next steps. They would launch a national campaign, reaching out to families, veterans, and citizens across the country to gather even more support. They would mobilize communities, creating a groundswell of awareness that would be impossible to ignore. Deborah envisioned rallies, marches, and events that would unite people in a shared mission, to honor every hero, to ensure that no one was left behind. As the campaign unfolded, Deborah found herself speaking at various events, sharing her message and the stories of those who had joined the fight. The momentum was palpable, and she could feel the energy of hope coursing through the crowd. Families stood shoulder to shoulder, united by their love for their fallen heroes, ready to demand change. But amidst the victories, there were still moments of deep reflection. Deborah often found herself in quiet spaces, thinking about Chris and the legacy he had left behind. She would visit his grave, kneeling beside the headstone, the weight of her grief mingling with pride. She would talk to him, sharing the progress of their campaign, hoping he could hear her. "We're doing this for you, Chris," she would whisper, her voice heavy with emotion. "You are not forgotten." As the campaign gained traction, Deborah received an unexpected message from a national news outlet requesting an interview. They wanted to highlight her story, the movement, and the impact it was having across the country. Excitement surged within her, but so did apprehension. This was an opportunity to reach a wider audience, to amplify their cause, but it also meant stepping further into the spotlight. With Major Jackson's encouragement and the support of her team, Deborah decided to accept the invitation. She understood that sharing her story could inspire others to join the fight, to lend their voices to a cause that mattered deeply. On the day of the interview, she arrived at the studio, her heart pounding with a mix of nerves and determination. As the cameras rolled, Deborah spoke candidly about her journey, the grief of losing Chris, and the mission to ensure that all fallen soldiers received the honors they deserved. She shared the stories of families who had been affected by the budget cuts, painting a vivid picture of the injustices faced by those who had sacrificed so much. Her passion radiated through the screen, and as she spoke, she felt a sense of purpose enveloping her. The interview aired, and within hours, Deborah's phone was flooded with messages of support from across the nation. People were moved by her story, inspired by her resilience, and eager to join the movement. Social media exploded with activity. The hashtag Honor Every Hero trending as individuals shared their stories and pledged their support. Deborah felt a surge of hope swell within her. They were creating a tidal wave of change, and it was gaining momentum. As the weeks turned into months, the campaign continued to grow. They organized rallies that drew thousands, each event a powerful testament to the collective spirit of those who had come together for a common cause. The energy was infectious, and Deborah felt invigorated by the passion of those around her. Families shared their stories, veterans spoke of their sacrifices, and together, they painted a picture of a nation united in honoring its heroes. One particularly impactful rally took place at the steps of the Capitol. Deborah stood before the crowd, the air thick with anticipation as she prepared to address those gathered. The sea of faces reflected determination and hope, and she could feel the collective heartbeat of their movement. As she stepped up to the microphone, her heart raced, but she felt a sense of calm wash over her. "Today, we stand not just for our loved ones, but for every soldier who has ever worn the uniform," she began, her voice ringing with conviction. "We are here to demand justice, to ensure that no hero is forgotten, and that every sacrifice is honored. This is our time to rise, to be heard, and to create lasting change." The crowd erupted in applause, a wave of energy surging through the air. Deborah felt their support enveloping her, fueling her resolve. She went on to share stories of fallen heroes, the sacrifices made by families, and the urgent need for policy change that would guarantee military honors for all service members. "We owe it to them," she urged, her voice unwavering. "We owe it to our heroes to ensure that their legacies live on, that their sacrifices are honored, and that their families are supported." The applause intensified, the crowd chanting, "Honor! Honor! Honor!" Their voices melded into a powerful chorus, echoing through the steps of the Capitol, and Deborah felt a rush of energy wash over her. In that moment, she knew they were making history, their stories, their pain, and their determination resonating far beyond the physical barriers around them. As the rally concluded, the crowd dispersed, but the fire within Deborah continued to burn bright. She knew that they had only scratched the surface of what they could achieve. Inspired by the enthusiasm of those gathered, she gathered her team for a debriefing, eager to strategize the next steps. Sitting in a circle at a local community center, the atmosphere buzzed with excitement. Ideas flowed freely as they discussed how to maintain the momentum they had built. They brainstormed ways to leverage social media, encourage more personal stories to be shared, and engage local leaders to amplify their message. Deborah felt a sense of camaraderie with the group, their shared commitment intertwining their lives in a way she had never experienced before. "Let's create a series of videos," one of the veterans suggested, his voice steady and confident. "We can share personal stories from families who have been affected by the loss of honors. If we put faces to the names, it will resonate more deeply with the public and lawmakers alike." Deborah nodded enthusiastically. "Absolutely. We can capture the essence of their sacrifices and the pain of losing recognition. It will add a personal touch that statistics cannot convey." The team rallied around the idea, excitedly discussing logistics, potential locations, and the families they could reach out to. As the conversation flowed, Deborah felt a sense of purpose enveloping her, a belief that they were not just fighting for recognition, but also for healing and community. In the following weeks, they began to film testimonials, capturing heartfelt stories from families who had experienced the loss of their loved ones and the subsequent denial of military honors. Each video brought tears to Deborah's eyes as she listened to the pain and resilience echoing through the words. The families spoke of their loved ones with such pride, recounting tales of bravery and sacrifice, while also expressing the heart-wrenching hurt of feeling forgotten. The videos were shared online, and the response was overwhelming. People from all walks of life began to engage with their content, sharing it widely and contributing their own stories of loss. The hashtag #HonorEveryHero took on a life of its own, spreading like wildfire across social media platforms. News outlets began covering their movement more extensively, amplifying their message and reaching audiences far beyond their local community. With each new video, Deborah felt a deeper connection to the families involved. She became a liaison for their stories, ensuring they were heard and respected. The weight of grief was heavy, but together, they were transforming it into a powerful force for change. Deborah reveled in the moments of laughter shared after filming, exchanging stories, and building friendships that felt like a family forged through shared loss. Yet, amid the triumphs, there were still moments of despair. Deborah faced days when the enormity of the task felt insurmountable, when the frustration of bureaucracy threatened to extinguish the fire they had ignited. There were meetings that ended in disappointment, representatives who brushed off their concerns, and moments when the reality of grief would wash over her like a tidal wave. One such day, after an exhausting meeting with a local official who dismissed their cause as a niche concern, Deborah returned home feeling defeated. She sat on Chris's bed, the familiar ache of loss settling heavily on her shoulders. The walls felt suffocating, the memories of laughter and joy transformed into echoes of an unfulfilled promise. She closed her eyes, allowing the tears to flow freely, feeling the weight of the world pressing down on her. In that moment of vulnerability, she felt a gentle breeze sweep through the room, carrying with it the faint scent of Chris's cologne. It was as if he were there, urging her to rise, to push through the pain and continue the fight. She took a deep breath, reminding herself of the purpose that had driven her since the beginning. She had promised to honor his legacy and ensure that no family would experience the same heartache. With renewed determination, Deborah picked up her phone and began drafting a message to her team. "We may face hurdles, but we will not be deterred. Every setback is an opportunity to grow stronger. We owe it to our heroes and their families. Let's regroup and strategize. We are in this together." The response was immediate, with messages of support flooding in. The camaraderie they had built proved to be a source of strength, reminding her that she was not alone. They were a team, united in purpose, and together, they could overcome any obstacle in their path. As spring blossomed into summer, the campaign gained further traction. They organized a national day of awareness, encouraging communities to hold vigils in honor of fallen service members. Deborah envisioned a tapestry of lights across the country, each vigil a flicker of hope, a collective heartbeat resonating with love and remembrance. The day arrived, and as the sun set, thousands gathered across the nation, candles in hand, their faces illuminated by the soft glow of flickering flames. Deborah stood in her community park, surrounded by friends and family. The air was thick with emotion, the atmosphere charged with a sense of purpose. Her heart swelled with pride as she witnessed the unity that had blossomed from grief. As she prepared to speak, she looked out at the sea of faces, each one a testament to the love they carried for their fallen heroes. Tonight, we gather not just to remember those we have lost, but to demand that their sacrifices are honored, she began, her voice steady and strong. We are here to ensure that no one is forgotten, that every life lost in service to our country is recognized and celebrated. The crowd erupted in applause, their voices rising together in a powerful chorus. Deborah felt a wave of emotion wash over her, the collective spirit of remembrance enveloping her. She shared stories of fallen heroes, weaving their narratives into a tapestry of honor and sacrifice, and the crowd listened intently, engrossed in the tales of bravery and resilience. As the night deepened, candles flickered like stars, illuminating the darkness. Deborah led the crowd in a moment of silence, allowing the stillness to envelop them, a collective breath held in honor of those who had fallen. In that moment, she felt a profound connection to Chris, a sense of his presence surrounding her, urging her on. The National Day of Awareness was a resounding success, capturing the attention of lawmakers and media alike. The momentum they had built began to translate into tangible change. Deborah and her team received invitations to speak at various events, sharing their mission and advocating for policy reforms that would ensure military honors for all service members, regardless of budget constraints. As the campaign progressed, Deborah found herself standing before powerful figures, sharing her story and the stories of countless families. She spoke passionately about the need for change, urging lawmakers to recognize the sacrifices made by those who had served. The response was overwhelmingly positive, and Deborah felt a sense of hope blooming in her heart. Then came the day she had long awaited, a meeting with a congressional committee dedicated to reviewing military policies. Deborah felt a mix of excitement and nervousness as she prepared her speech. This was a pivotal moment, one that could change the course of their campaign and ensure that no family would ever again experience the pain of being denied honors. As she entered the committee room, the weight of responsibility settled on her shoulders. She took a deep breath, reminding herself of the purpose behind her mission. She was not just advocating for Chris. She was advocating for every soldier who had served and sacrificed. The committee members listened attentively as she shared her story, her voice unwavering as she spoke about the impact of budget cuts on military honors. She painted a vivid picture of the emotional toll it took on families like hers, the heartbreak of feeling forgotten while standing at the gravesides of their loved ones. When she finished, there was a moment of silence, the weight of her words hanging in the air. Finally, one of the committee members spoke, his voice filled with empathy. "Thank you for your courage in sharing this. We cannot allow our heroes to be overlooked, and we appreciate the work you're doing to honor them." Deborah felt a surge of hope as the committee discussed potential policy changes, their words echoing the urgency of her mission. They agreed to review the budget allocations for military honors, recognizing the importance of ensuring that every fallen service member received the farewell they deserved. As the meeting concluded, Deborah stepped out into the bright sunlight, her heart racing with excitement. They had taken a significant step forward, and she could feel the momentum building. The campaign had reached a critical juncture, and she knew they were on the verge of something monumental. In the weeks that followed, the committee's recommendations gained traction, and Deborah found herself riding a wave of optimism. They began to receive support from influential lawmakers, veterans organizations, and citizens who rallied behind the cause. The power of their collective voices resonated, and Deborah felt a sense of unity that transcended the individual stories they had all shared. One evening, as Deborah sat at her kitchen table reflecting on the progress they had made, she received a phone call that would change everything. It was Major Jackson, his voice filled with excitement. "Deborah, you won't believe it. The committee has drafted a bill that will ensure military honors for all fallen service members, regardless of budget cuts. They want you to testify before Congress. Deb? Ora's heart raced at the news, a mix of disbelief and joy flooding her senses. "Are you serious?" she exclaimed, her pulse quickening. "This is incredible. What does this mean for our campaign?" "It means your voice will be heard on the national stage," Major Jackson replied, his tone steady and encouraging. "You have the chance to advocate directly for those who have sacrificed so much. This is an opportunity to share Chris's story and the stories of so many others with lawmakers who can affect real change." The reality of the moment settled in, and Deborah felt a wave of gratitude wash over her. This was her chance to ensure that no other mother would have to endure the pain of her loss without recognition. She took a deep breath, allowing the weight of her purpose to anchor her. "I won't let this moment slip away. I'll prepare, and I'll make sure every story is heard." In the days leading up to her testimony, Deborah immersed herself in preparation. She gathered data, testimonials, and personal stories, crafting a compelling narrative that illustrated the importance of military honors. With the support of her team and Major Jackson, she rehearsed her speech, refining her delivery until it felt as natural as breathing. Each word she practiced echoed in her mind, a tribute to Chris and every fallen hero. The day of the testimony arrived, and Deborah stood outside the congressional building, her heart pounding in her chest. She felt the energy of the city around her, the weight of history pressing in. This was a moment that could change lives, a pivotal juncture where her grief could transform into a force for good. As she stepped into the hearing room, the atmosphere was charged with anticipation. She took her seat at the witness table, glancing around at the faces of the committee members. They looked serious, their expressions a blend of curiosity and determination. Deborah felt a surge of courage as she prepared to share her story. When it was her turn to speak, she stood tall, her voice steady as she began. "Thank you for allowing me to testify today. My name is Deborah Marshall, and I am here representing not just my son, Marine Captain Chris Marshall, but every soldier who has served this nation and the families left behind." The room fell silent, all eyes on her as she recounted Chris's journey, his dreams, his dedication, and the ultimate sacrifice he made for his country. She spoke of the anguish of being denied military honors and the ripple effect it had on families like hers. "No family should ever feel forgotten," she implored, her voice rising with emotion. "Every soldier deserves a proper farewell, a recognition of their service that honors their legacy." As she spoke, Deborah could see the committee members leaning in, their expressions shifting from indifference to understanding. She shared the stories of other families who had reached out to her, their pain palpable through the words she spoke. "We are not just numbers on a budget sheet. We are mothers, fathers, siblings, and friends who have lost everything. We are the voices of those who can no longer speak for themselves." When Deborah finished, there was a moment of silence that felt heavy with emotion. Finally, one of the senators spoke up, his voice filled with conviction. "Thank you for your bravery in sharing these stories. We cannot allow budget constraints to dictate how we honor our heroes. We owe it to them and their families to ensure that every fallen service member receives the honors they deserve." The room erupted in applause, a wave of support washing over Deborah. She felt tears prick at her eyes, a mix of relief and gratitude. This was the moment they had all worked for, a turning point that could reshape the way their nation honored its heroes. As the testimony concluded, the committee members began discussing next steps, promising to take immediate action. Deborah stepped outside the hearing room, her heart soaring with hope. The fight was far from over, but she felt a renewed sense of purpose. They were on the brink of a change that could impact countless lives. In the weeks that followed, the committee's bill gained momentum, attracting bipartisan support. Deborah and her team stayed at the forefront of the campaign, tirelessly advocating for the passage of the legislation. They organized rallies, wrote letters, and continued to share the stories of fallen heroes. Each day brought new challenges, but the collective spirit of their movement fueled their determination. Finally, the day arrived when the bill was set to be voted on in Congress. The atmosphere was electric, anticipation crackling in the air as Deborah, Major Jackson, and other supporters gathered in the gallery. As the votes were cast, Deborah held her breath, her heart racing with every tally. When the final vote was announced, the room erupted in cheers. The bill had passed, ensuring military honors for all fallen service members, regardless of budget constraints. Deborah felt a wave of emotion crash over her, tears streaming down her cheeks as she embraced Major Jackson. "We did it! Chris's legacy is honored." The news spread like wildfire, and Deborah was inundated with messages of congratulations and support. Families across the nation celebrated alongside her, their stories finally recognized. The movement had not only brought change to policies, but had also created a lasting community of support for those grieving their loved ones. In the months that followed, Deborah continued her advocacy work, focusing on ensuring that the new policies were implemented effectively. She spoke at events, sharing her journey and empowering others to advocate for their loved ones. The movement had transformed her grief into a powerful force for change, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. As she stood at Chris's grave one quiet evening, a sense of peace washed over her. She could feel his spirit surrounding her, filled with pride for the work they had accomplished together. "We did it, Chris," she whispered, her heart swelling with love. "Your sacrifice will never be forgotten." With renewed purpose, Deborah walked away from the grave, ready to continue the fight for every fallen hero, ensuring that their legacies would shine brightly for generations to come. She was no longer just a grieving mother. She was a voice for the voiceless, a champion for justice, and a beacon of hope for those who had lost everything. The journey was long and filled with challenges, but she knew they were on the path to creating a world where every hero was honored and remembered.